Welcome everyone. I'm meteorologist Taylor Stephenson here tracking Erin as it passes by to our east this afternoon. Now, the biggest effects from our tidal flooding potential comes tonight, and so we want to give you an update on what we're seeing with Erin at the moment. Thankfully, Erin continuing to make that turn or that movement towards the north and starting a now northeastern track, just kind of outlining the U.S. Still, the model's in big agreement that Erin's eye, or the center of Erin, should stay offshore for us for the remainder of this hurricane's life cycle. That's the very good news. But again, because we are so close to Erin, and Erin, as you can tell from our infrared satellite, is such a large storm, we still will feel the impacts of the high tidal flooding, especially later on today, some breezy conditions, and again, just watching for those higher wave heights, maybe even up to about 6 to 10 feet in Virginia Beach. Now, good news is pulling away from the Outer Banks today, but we have seen an isolated 15 to 18 foot wave there in the Outer Banks today. So let's take a look at Erin and where Erin is now. We just got the 2 p.m. intermediate advisory in from the Hurricane Center, and right now Erin is still a Category 2 hurricane. Sustained winds right now of 100 miles per hour, so weakening as it heads north. I don't think it ever made it really back to that Cat 3 status. Again, a weak, quote unquote, Category 3 storm versus a very high-end Category 2 hurricane. There's really not much difference to our forecast. But again, Erin weakening, but also getting much larger as it heads up through parts of the western Atlantic. In the orange, those are still active tropical storm warnings in place for the Outer Banks, also Virginia Beach, and the Eastern Shore. And then the coastal waters of New Jersey, Delaware, and the Delmarva Peninsula. So please take caution. The winds are the main driving factor for issuing tropical storm warnings. We could see wind gusts in excess of 40 miles per hour. But that does not talk about the coastal impacts. We still have coastal flood warnings in effect for everywhere around the bay and down through the Outer Banks, also seeing storm surge warnings. So we are really talking mainly about the water effect of this storm, rather really than the tropical storm force or hurricane force winds. A lot of that is well out to sea, as Erin right now is about 400 miles to the west of Bermuda. Now, Bermuda also tropical storm warnings in effect there as well, and then 285 miles east of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. Now, we do have reporters out in the Outer Banks today, so definitely make sure to tune in to 13 News Now starting at 4 p.m. to see the conditions, especially as high tide comes later on this evening. Now, here's a track of Erin as we progress through the next few days into early next week. Erin weakening into a Category 1 hurricane with sustained winds of 90 miles per hour by early tomorrow morning, and then a post-tropical storm as we get into the weekend. So moving to the south and east of Canada, notice how North America is staying away from the center, all a part of that low pressure system, cold front that rolled through earlier this week, kind of acting like a barrier, like just moving and carrying Erin out to sea. Then heading immediately to the extreme northern Atlantic and then picking up a lot of speed as it does so. By Tuesday morning, it could be anywhere close to Ireland and the United Kingdom. So the models agree with this. Here's a look at the spaghetti models of Erin, and you can see that it's still taking Erin's center just offshore of the United States. Again, we will still see the indirect impacts of Erin through the northeast and through the mid-Atlantic, but for those who are thinking maybe Erin would not make that turn to the north, all the models disagree, or turn to the northeast. A lot of those models, all of them disagree with that sentiment, and they agree that this system should continue its trek anywhere between Greenland and Ireland. So that's good news for the North American area, Canada, and the United States. Right now, here's a look at our sustained winds, and you can see winds these are sustained, not gusts, just sustained. We're seeing mainly those breezier conditions around the eastern portions of our viewing area, places that are closer to Erin. So right now, sustained winds in Norfolk, 20 to 25 miles per hour, and Currituck and Manio, 15 to 20. In Melfa and the Eastern Shore, same thing, 15 to to 20 miles per hour. As you head inland even, we are still seeing some sustained winds anywhere from 10 to 15 miles per hour. But the biggest impacts will be for those who live around the Bay, who live around the Atlantic, who live around the Currituck Sound and the Pamlico Sound. So we'll be watching for that. Another look at sustained winds right now, sustained winds in Duck at 33 miles per hour, sustained winds in Hampton at 20. So a breezy day for us. And you can see the wind gusts around the peninsulas are up to 25 to 30 miles per hour. On the south side, wind gusts up to 30 to almost 40 miles per hour, especially around Naval Station Norfolk and near Cape Henry. As we get into the Outer Banks, sustained winds are around the 20 to 30 mile per hour range, wind gusts up to about 30. Now, this is a look at the ocean front right now. A very quiet scene from what it typically is for some of the last days of quote summer, right? Because most of our students go back to school. Either they went back to school earlier this week or they are going back to school on Monday, and usually this is filled, but you can kind of see how rough the waves are right now here across the Virginia Beach oceanfront and how far they're pulling upshore. Now, of course, dangerous rip currents will still be in place for us today and even lingering into tomorrow. So definitely not a safe environment for those going out into the water. I would advise that you stay offshore as this system passes by. But right now it is a cool day because we have a lot of cloud cover. And because Erin's span is easily over 600 miles, some of those clouds are associated with Erin, especially around the coast. And we're also seeing just a small bit of drizzle in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Right now, temperatures at the moment are in the middle 70s area wide, so cool and cloudy for us right now. But my concern today turns towards the high tides, and those high tides occur right around 7 to 9 p.m. today. And with the high tides, with Erin in the picture, we could see the possibility of potentially some overwash or some flooded roadways. And it's really for those, especially around Norfolk and Virginia Beach, where you are already flood prone. I'm talking around the Hague, I'm talking around the Lynn Haven Inlet, places like that where we're going to see higher waves up to 10 feet, but also with the pushing of those north to northeast winds that pushes the water onto the land for us, especially if you live somewhere like Norfolk. So again, we still have those coastal flood warnings posted for anyone who lives around the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic today. So if you live near Sewell's Point, around Sewell's Point, we'll be in moderate flood stage at 9 p.m. today, where the heights could reach up to 5.7 feet. At Lynn Haven Inlet, we may enter major flood stage at 9 p.m. today, where we could get close to that 6-foot peak right there around 9 o'clock. In Yorktown, also underneath that coastal flood warning, we could have moderate flood stage there with tonight around 9 p.m. where we could reach just above that 5-foot threshold. And then around Duck Pier, that is my major concern for today, especially around the Outer Banks. It's just geographically exposed. And so for Duck Pier, we may even get close to that 7-foot height with major flood stage expected there. So that is why, with all of those concerns, one, we have evacuated the Outer Banks, and NC-12 will most likely be shut down for at least a couple days. I've already seen videos on X where the water is just taking over NC-12 and sand is starting to build up on top of that. Also, we had the Coastal Edge East Coast Surfing Championships this week, and they postponed and delayed the competition just for today because of the wind direction. That northeast wind brings in that really choppy water. It's not conducive to surfing at this moment. So they're going to restart tomorrow. So it is not going to be the most impactful hurricane we've ever seen here in Hampton Roads or Northeast North Carolina by far. But it is a hurricane that is going to disrupt our daily lives. And so that's why we do still want you all to take this seriously when it does come to the water risk for today with the high tides and the possibility of tidal flooding later on this evening, and the possibility of some high high surf heights. Again, Virginia Beach 6 to 10, maybe an isolated 12-foot wave. In the Outer Banks, we've seen anywhere from 15 to 18 feet already. And of course, I'm encouraging you all to stay offshore. Do not go into the water. Dangerous rip currents are in place for today as well. But the interesting thing about Erin is that Erin is going to be one of those hurricanes where it brings us good weather after the fact. For Erin, because it is to the east of us, it's going to bring in that north wind, which will actually pull in a very fall feel to us here for tomorrow and parts of the weekend. So typically when we have a hurricane rolling through, because we have all that rainfall and it gets soaked into the ground and then it gets evaporated up throughout the day as the hurricane exits, we get all that humidity. And so it just has a sticky, warm feel usually after a storm passes. Because Erin is not making landfall and we're to the east of the system, we get those back dry winds, and that will give us a gorgeous day tomorrow. And I was talking to Tony Polino. He is the general manager of the Coastal Edge East Coast Surfing Championships, and he was excited about tomorrow. So tomorrow's forecast shows temperatures will be in the lower 70s. We're going to make it to, at best, the lower 80s. Some of us may only stay in the upper 70s. Low humidity, lots of sunshine, a great day, but still make sure that you are being aware of your beach surroundings. If you decide to go to the beach tomorrow, if there are double red flags, that means do not swim in those waters. Of course, we are watching for that. And I do want to give you a look at the rip current risks for today across the area so we can get a better look. Now, here's a look at the rip currents for today across the eastern shore going up into the Delmarva Peninsula, also around Virginia Beach and through the Outer Banks. And you can see that everyone has a high rip current risk. What does that mean? A high rip current risk means it's dangerous and potentially life-threatening to be in those waters anywhere here. And again, looking at the ocean front, you're seeing how rough those waves are now. So making sure that you are staying weather aware in this situation, but atypical to most hurricanes, we will not see any rainfall really from this system, especially as Erin continues its trek to the northeast. Now, it's getting close to peak hurricane season. Peak season is on September the 10th. Today is August the 21st. And so we have basically less than 3 weeks until we hit peak hurricane season, and it is showing it there in the Atlantic. We do have 3 other areas that we are watching for the time being. And I'm surprised we did not get Ferdinand, the next named storm there in the Atlantic already. Right now we have one area, the high chance, and I'll show it with my little cursor here. Here is the area right now that has a high chance in this red. Right now, this is our this is the wave that has a 50% chance development over the next 2 days and 70 over the next week, and likely to take more of a northern turn early than Erin did previously. So that's good news, not only for us here in the U.S., but also for our friends who live there in the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles Islands. And if you do not know what that is, that's okay. This is just Cuba through Hispaniola in Puerto Rico down into places like the British and Dutch West Indies. Now that's one area. Also watching one more area right here to our north, north of the Caribbean, really kind of a standalone. This one has a 30% chance development over the next 2 and 7 days. So you're watching for this one. And also one that was just right behind our previous one that has a high chance. We have a medium chance development for this system right here as it progresses through the eastern now into the central Atlantic. This is very typical for this time of year. Again, hurricane season really ramps up as those water temperatures are really hot at the moment. Some surface sea surface temperatures are around 80 to even 90 degrees. That's enough fuel to get those tropical waves going. So we'll definitely make sure that we keep that in mind and just watch for this. But again, no concerns to the U.S. at this point. But again, all eyes are on Erin, and I'm really watching for the potential of some higher tides today that could pull in some of that higher surf and inundate some of our areas around the Outer Banks and the south side and peninsulas. Again, as you see, Erin still a Category 2 sustained winds with the 2 p.m. advisory of 100 miles per hour. Again, the worst of Erin is out to sea, so we're really not going to see the direct impacts of Erin, just indirect impacts. That's the very good news about this system. And for those who may have seen on social media that Erin is going to magically continue this trek north, again, a lot of that is going to be debunked after we get to the next couple of days, as a lot of the models keep Erin well offshore in terms of its center. Will you still feel the impacts indirectly? Of course. High rip current risk, high surf, the potential for maybe some tidal flooding around the mid-Atlantic and even some parts of the Northeast. But the center of Erin should remain offshore. Of course, we'll keep you updated here on 13 News Now Plus and 13 News Now on air and online at 13newsnow.com with the latest information on Erin. For now, make sure to join us at 4 p.m. as we break down the forecast of Erin and what we expect for impacts tonight. I'll be here at 4 o'clock, and so will Chief Meteorologist Tim Pendages. See you then.